it up manually then.
You want me to turn it up?
Down one way.
That's not reaching right.
안녕하세요 여러분. 제 이름은 Duncan James입니다. Welcome here tonight. My name is James Duncan. I'm going to be presenting my project on moving abroad to a place that I've never been. So, why living abroad? There's several different reasons. Primarily, it's something personal, very close to my heart. It's something that I've wanted to do since I was a small child. I've been interested in the Middle East, or in the Eastern cultures, languages, and peoples, and it's something that really spoke to me for a great long time. It's also a project that is attainable, and it's going to be personally gratifying once I successfully pull this off. So, scope statement on this. It's a very limited scope project. There's not a lot of factors, but because of the fact that it's something I've never done, there's a lot of research to go into those few steps. Okay. It only affects me, my instructors, my potential employers, people that will be directly influenced by my own efforts. So the communications plan on it, obviously, is going to be very simple. I'm dealing with my instructors, personal communications, emails, things of that sort. Very simplistic communication plan. There's not a lot to it. When dealing with my employers, same thing. What I put out, what I turn into them, depending on the job. Certain telephone conferencing for some of my educational, some of my language learning skills has been done online, talking with people in different countries and learning about the culture from the people who live there. Peers and classmates, between helping them out and getting support from them, getting the time and the energy in to help each other learn and to learn from each other. I know we've had several years of working together in these classes. Some of these faces I've been seeing for the last 4 years that I've been here, almost 4 years. So as far as communication, again, there's not a lot to it, but it's very important, particularly in the online classes, which I've had 1 or 2 of those. So communication becomes a big issue as far as clarity, as far as being able to communicate to people that don't even speak English that well. Risk analysis. One of the biggest things about this project is it's a very high-risk project. I've never been to Korea. I've never been really anywhere outside of the United States, except for a couple of places in Mexico. And even those were tourist towns, so they really don't prepare you for international travel. There's a lot of cost. There's a lot of charges for the school, travel fees, stuff like that, plus any debts that I already have. It's a very difficult hurdle to get over. As we all know, with the economy being what it is, it's very difficult these days even just to scrape by living, just to get to work and back and get your daily food. The time frame, again, is another risk. It's a huge factor. Because of the fact that this plan is going to be taking up approximately 9 years from start to finish, from the time that I decided to start school, going through school, getting the financing that I'm going to need to pay for all of the loans for school, and then going through and getting the travel expenses. And then finally, once my daughter turns 18, to the point that I actually feel like it's okay for me to leave. So there's a lot that can change in that time. Economics can change. We've already seen that happen twice since I started going to school again. Foreign matters can change. I mean, I'm sure everybody has seen in the news about all of the different things that are going on between South Korea and North Korea. So that makes for a huge factor, since Korea is where I'm headed. It's where I'm aiming to go. So there are a lot of factors that can put a major kibosh on my actual leaving. Plus, 9 years, a person's values, a person's ideals can change. In that time period, I've already changed the initial plan from going to Japan to Korea. My initial plan was to go to Tokyo. But in that time period, I've already had to change my plans, my ideas, and what I wanted to do just from the research going to Japan. The knowledge itself changed the project. So the mitigation strategies. Obviously student loans, that's a big part. Federal grants when I can do it. And employment. So once I've got a decent employment that I can start paying off the loans, that's going to be one of the most important parts of the mitigation strategy. If I don't get a decent job to pay off those loans, the entire project could be destroyed. Scope flexibility. Again, since I've already changed my plans once, I can still change them again. I don't necessarily have to go to Seoul, Korea. I don't have to teach at Seoul University. I could go to Busan, Korea. I could go to Japan. There's some flexibility built into the scope, just based on the fact that it's the region that I'm after, not the specific locations. Ongoing risk assessment research. Again, I mentioned earlier the problems with South Korea and North Korea. One of the mitigation strategies I've been working on is that I've been keeping track of all of the conflicts that go on between South Korea and North Korea, and determine, is this going to be a serious enough effect to stop me in my tracks? As of yet, I have not seen any evidence that it will. But then now we have other countries getting involved. We've got China that's also over there working on trying to expand their region. With these in mind, I have to keep track of what's going on. I have to monitor whether or not it's going to affect me. Project budget. That's a scary one. Overall, between rent, student loans, debts, travel expenses, the courses to take, the language and cultural information that I need, it's a pretty good sized number. $239,888. That's enough to stop anybody in their tracks and say, whoa, I can't afford this. But it's important enough to me to be able to do it that I have worked on finding a way to afford it. If it takes me a few extra years, with the loans in there, I plan on being able to afford this. I plan on being able to overcome that huge obstacle. Project life cycle. Project life cycle is pretty simple. So we're going to have the educational phase. This is basically the gaining of the knowledge that I need, both for gaining employment and for fitting in once I arrive at my destination. And the financial phase. Financial phase isn't so much about the initial costs, but it's about recovering the debts that will be accrued throughout the span of the project. This is more about the employment, I should say. This is about gaining that income that will sufficiently cover the debts that I know I'm going to be accruing over these years. And then finally, the completion and execution phase. This will be when I actually get together the funds and up and go. This will be the arrival in Korea and hopefully the ability to integrate in that society. Educational requirements. Because this is such a huge project, it's a lot of education involved. General education is going to require me to learn a business skill, something that I can use in the real world, something that will help me get the income to mitigate the cost. Plus, it has to be recognizable. Just getting a job is not enough. I have to be able to market those skills. I know several people who have tried doing so with just certification, but there are limits to certification. So it's more important to me to have an accredited school that will be recognized nationwide, which is why I'm here. Project-specific education. Language skills, first off. That's the most important thing. Being able to communicate once I arrive. Additionally, I'm going to need to know the culture. I'm going to need to know a few things, how not to make people angry. There's a lot of different things in other cultures that we don't even think about on a daily basis. We go and shake someone's hand, but if you shake someone's hand in Japan and Korea, and you only use one hand, you've just insulted them. You've shown them that I am better than you, and now you are subjugated by me. So in order to show respect, you have to show two handshakes. This is something that, if I had not learned, would make it very difficult for me to get along with them. Also, the fact that they bow rather than shake most times. There's often not any contact between two people meeting each other. It's all strictly verbal and by bowing. Then, of course, there's the travel knowledge. Learning what the rates are, learning what kind of things can be and cannot be transported during travel. It may be perfectly all right for me to go onto a plane in Korea or in Japan with a certain item, but I may not be able to board a plane with that here. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's something completely normal here, but say it's a fruit and I can't take it over into Korea because that fruit is dangerous to the other plant life that they have there. This is something that is going to have to be researched before I plan on what I'm taking. Employment expectations. Though it's difficult to get a job these days, there are several expectations that I have for employment. First off, it has to be full-time, obviously. Anything less than that isn't going to generate the capital that I need. Sufficient income for the debt reconciliation and room for advancement. Again, if it doesn't bring in enough money, it's not going to get me the debts covered off. So loans will still be there, and I will still be stuck stateside. Desired traits. Now these ones aren't necessarily a requirement, but it's additional stuff that would be nice. So within the field of the educational study, right now I'm fortunate because since this is a business degree and I'm working in a business office, pretty much everything I do is considered within my field. Transfer presence in the desired location. Well, that one's a little harder. We're looking at some place that has offices in Korea. A lot of places in the United States, a lot of companies are not going to be international. It's going to be more hard and more difficult to come by. And then, of course, related to becoming the end goal of becoming an instructor. My eventual goal is to be an English teacher in South Korea. So, if a job gives me the experience in instructing others, teaching them, whether it be work-related, if I'm just a trainer with something at work, or if it's an actual teaching experience, that would be a great benefit to me. But again, that's going to be a little harder to come by. Project schedule. So this outlines the basics of the schedule. There's a more detailed schedule in the handouts that are going around. So this just shows the schedule for the higher education, looking at a total of 1,449 days. That sounds like a lot, but that's really only 4 years. Excuse me, 6 years. It's 2 years for the associates, 2 years for the bachelor's, 2 years for the master's. Which at the beginning of this project, the master's wasn't part of the equation. Then the education-related employment. Now I've got a large time frame on this one, but in reality this is more the time between the initial associate's degree and when my daughter becomes 18. So that's flexible, that can change. It's not so set in stone. And then of course the courses for Japanese and Korean. Korean is really the important one, but because Korea does a lot of business with Japan, Japanese is one of the major secondary languages that I'm looking at. In addition, I'll be looking later at Mandarin and Tagalog, also looking at. So here's the actual time frame of it. Now this one does the other way. It makes it look rather short. But if you think about the fact that this is a 9-year stretch, that's actually quite a significant chunk of time. Some of the factors overlap. So we've got a little bit of overlap here between the education and the employment. So there's multiple things going on at each time during this project. Excuse me, and so I have to manage that time wisely. Resource plan. The resource plan gets dicey. There's not a lot of funds involved. So I'm going to have to figure out how to come up with that capital later on. The costs and expenses is going to make things really complicated as far as a normal plan would be. But with the loans, that gets pushed back a little bit and gets deferred. The later funds are going to have to backfill that. Without the employment, the entire project falls to pieces. So the resources are very limited, very slim. Reconciliation of tasks. So, the education phase, 6 to 8 years. Again, master's was not initially part of the equation. So, I've had to add that in. The additional 2 years above and beyond the master's is to account for any language or cultural lessons that I'm going to have to take. Management and cultural knowledge acquisition and essential skills obtained. So, again, business. Have to learn business, have to learn culture. They do business differently over there too. And that's another thing that I'm going to have to find ways to integrate with. Whereas here, everything is me, me, me. I'm for number one. I have to look out for the best. Over there, it is a team effort like you have never seen. I take, for instance, when the Seawall ferry went down recently, the entire country bowed their head in shame. Every last one. They blamed the people that were responsible on the ship, but also the entire corporation, all the way up to the president of the country. That is how family-oriented and team-oriented they are. And so that is one of those hurdles that I'm going to have to try and get into. Because I'm coming from a society where it's all about, I need to make money for me, and I need to look out for number one. Financial phase. Financial phase takes up a good chunk of it. I put in here 1 to 6 year life cycle, but really, I've been fighting with finances for the entirety of the 9 years. Even just coming to school, eating the gas and food to sustain during that time frame, I've had to go from part-time jobs, temp jobs, seasonal jobs, just to keep up that income. Management knowledge and essential skills implemented. So everything that I'm learning here, trying to apply that to my project, to the jobs that I'm getting, and in a way trying to make that my ability to get the income better and get recognition for what I've done, to make a name for myself so that people will be able to hire me easier. And the completion and execution phase, that's about a 1 to 3 year life cycle. Again, I gave room on that one mostly because once I'm done with the education, I don't know what it's going to take before I can integrate with the society over there. From my personal perspective right now, I'm fairly knowledgeable. But since I've never been, to them, I know nothing. So it's going to take some time to learn everything that I need in order to get ready for the actual departure. Questions? Does anybody have any questions about the project, about the scope of it? Anything?
When you finally do decide to move and you're ready to go, do you have a plan for your belongings to come with you, or are you just going to start anew with over there?
I'm looking at limited belongings going with me. The majority of what I own is not coming with me. It's going to be a new life with new rules. New customs, just new ways of thinking. I'll take the essentials that I know I'm going to need. Anything else? As far as I know, if I take even my meager belongings with me, once I get there, depending on how much personal belongings is the standard to own, I could look like I'm trying to live above my means. And that could be potentially detrimental to my fitting in. Any other questions?
Is your scope flexibility, is that your contingency plan? Or?
That is my primary contingency plan, since there's not really much that I can do as far as the funds, like the external factor. The flexibility of the scope is really the biggest contingency. The ability for me to change at a moment's notice and maybe not even go the route that I'm planning. There's certain limitations to that flexibility because I do intend on going either to Japan or Korea. But the time frame and the exact location once I get there is the flexibility portion of that.
You might want to read up on Hofstede. You think the 7 attributes of culture. It's pretty good.
I will think of that. Thank you. Anyone else?
What does your family think about you leaving and just, you know?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's probably mixed feelings. Probably, why are you leaving so far away, and at the same time, get the hell out?
They want to answer that question.
I know some of my friends are like, why are you going so far away? And others of my friends are like, fine, I see how it is to be alone.
What about your kids?
My kids, they're of mixed emotion on it too. My daughter would like to come with me, but she's afraid that it would be too different, and she wouldn't fit in. My son wants to go with me, but I think that's probably going to change now that he's living on his own and is greatly involved with a girlfriend. So that's probably also going to change.
What were your benchmarks? Or I don't know what they call it, office project plans?
The benchmarks are basically the completion of each degree level, the completion of the language courses, the attaining of sufficient employment. Like right now I'm at entry level, so that does not fit against my benchmark. And then the final benchmark is when my daughter turns 18. Anyone else? Yes?
So one good thing about living in Korea is you only got to pay the federal taxes, right?
Not true. Not true. Until I gain citizenship and renounce United States citizenship, the United States is the only country in the world that will still tax me on foreign soil.
I got a friend that lives over there, he's not getting taxed. He's a citizen.
It's probably because he's a citizen with the...
He's a U.S. citizen.
Oh, he's a U.S. citizen? Well, technically he should be paying income tax.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah, because right now the United States is actually cracking down on people that are living abroad and not paying income tax.
Well, he works for the government over there, so.
That actually would qualify him for not paying taxes on American soil.
He don't have to file for taxes. Also, you ever try looking at those service learning programs they have over there?
Actually, there are several learning programs that I'm looking into over there, including they actually have like a recruiting service where instead of me looking for a job, I will contact the recruiting service from here, and they will look for a job for me over there, and then help me move from here to there. So that actually is a major portion of the completion phase, but it's unfortunately something that I haven't gotten a lot of information on just yet.
And you can contact them or go online and they'll have that and pick whatever you want, wherever you want to live at. And they see what they have on it.
Yeah, that's one of the options that I've been looking at. Any other questions? Welcome, Samnida.